They're marked for death. A trail of terror. The most amazing of all his terrifying adventures. The Invisible Man's Revenge. Welcome back to Entertainment Rebooted. Specifically, welcome back to another episode of Cinema Revisited, the classic Universal monster movies, where we are watching through all the classic Universal monster movies, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, the iconic. And also talking about what we would do if we had to try to recreate these classic films for a more modern audience. Of course, I am joined by my esteemed co-host, DJ. Say hi, DJ.
Hello.
All right, DJ, tonight's film was none other than 1944's The Invisible Man's Revenge. Give us a brief plot summary for those who have not seen this film mercifully. The good. All right, so the plot, Invisible Man's Revenge.
Plot. There was a plot in this movie?
No. There
Okay.
wasn't, but what images moved in front of our eyes?
Okay. So, the basic principle of this one is a guy comes back from somewhere. It's really confusing because, like, he breaks out of an asylum, I guess, and kills the orderlies, but we don't really ever figure out how he got there in the first place.
Well, and then it's very convoluted. So what we find out is after this like long introduction scene where we get the guy and the newspaper, he gets new clothes and things like that.
Yep.
He shows up at his former acquaintances' houses, and he's been missing for 5 years and 4 months or something like
Yeah.
that. And what happened in the 5 years ago was they were in the jungles. He got hit by a branch, supposedly, when they found a diamond field worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And now he's come back to collect because he has a.
I think it was
written
emeralds,
agreement.
but it doesn't really matter. What
It was like emeralds. Or,
Yeah,
I thought it was diamonds.
It might have been,
diamond field.
but it's like yeah, and he thinks he's getting like
50%.
shafted by his
Yeah.
partners, so he wants 50% of it, which they tell him that there isn't any money because like they lost it in bad investments. Which whatever, like which it could be true. The funny thing is they never actually clarify. There's so many plot holes in this because like, and confusion in the beginning of the film. So he gets thrown out of the house. He gets drugged by the wife, thrown out of the house. So he travels on, finds a doctor who gives them, who miraculously just happens to have an invisibility potion that he gives them to make him invisible, and then he goes for revenge on his, knocks out the doctor, goes for revenge to them. Tries to get him to sign it, does poorly at it, forces him at knife point to write his will to him, and then leaves without actually getting it.
Well,
to anyone that matters.
He leaves without taking the will.
Yes,
is the thing. Like
So-
the wife finds it, and he's still there. Like the Invisible Man's still there when the wife shows up to stop this whole thing, even though he's already written it out. And then he just decides, you know what? I'm going to live with the people I'm terrifying. And I need to marry their daughter. She's mine. And the other thing is like it's like possessive. It's just like it's my right. She doesn't know me. She's never met me, but dang it, she's hot.
Like, you know that picture of her in the jungle? Yeah, well, I had it with me. It wasn't lost. I have it with me. I kept looking at her every day. It's like
I kept looking at her every day. It's a little sticky, but you can still see her.
it's so bad. And then he meets this wingman guy that like tries to blackmail the family over his story, but without any proof.
Right. And it's like a local drunk that he's convinced, and the local drunk decides, I'm going to sue for this man who I found like in the river, not really panicking but drowning.
And then like there's a bunch of hijinks, and really
we've actually gotten out of order with that because him like becoming invisible happens like after all this stuff because he tries to sue it.
He tries to blackmail him before he becomes invisible. Yeah, and then he becomes invisible, comes back, helps the drunk guy and friends with darts, and then win a gamble, and then he goes and threatens the family again, threatens the boyfriend,
when
goes to become visible because the guy that betrayed him told him that he should be visible. So
that he can marry his daughter.
So
that's the only reason. That's the stipulation. It's like, oh, you can marry my daughter, but you can only marry my daughter if you're visible.
So he does, and then he comes back to the house, and after killing the doctor and burning the house to the ground to take his blood to become visible, then he starts going invisible again. So then he's gonna kill the boyfriend to take his blood, and then they catch him, and the dog of the
the dog of the mad scientist
kills him.
It kills him. And that's how it ends. It's like they have this like long dramatic thing where he's like, hey, your gut is just desserts because nature finds a way kind of thing.
Yes, but then he gives that line that we said it beforehand. He gives that one line where he's like, he saw invisible like grievances against him. It's like the wife of the guy that they betrayed him by lying to him supposedly.
Well, so
we don't really know about the money, but he's owed something, and then. But she drugged him and they threw him out of the house and took the proof that they had that he was part of their estate.
Right. So it's just one of those things where it's like 5 years ago, a branch fell on him, and it's kind of implied that they try to murder him for the extra money. He comes back. They didn't think that he would ever come back because they thought they left him for dead in the jungle.
Yeah.
So when he comes back, he has in writing that they have to give him like 50% of all the stakes in the mine. But since they lost all the money in the mine, the wife's just like, oh, well, here, have a drink. And he takes the drink. He's like, oh, let's make a drink and we'll figure it out. We'll pay you. We'll make sure that we get our money back so that we can pay you your rightful share. You're absolutely right. Here, you want a drink? And he takes the drink and she says that it's because his mind is warped, but clearly she's poisoned him. But it's like his mind was so warped and he's so psychotic that it literally knocked him out. It made him woozy and knocked him out. And then she takes the note and destroys it, we assume.
Well, she says we're going to keep it for him. Yeah, she never shows her destroying it or getting rid of it. Right. So she might still have it. There's so many unanswered questions and loose ends in this film. Like and not like little things like a cup was left in a scene that is not missing alone. There's like one scene where like the knife is there and then disappears. That's kind of bad for that scene, but not a huge deal. But man, there's entire plot points that just stop dead and never get brought up again or mentioned again. And that last line when he's like, perceived grievances.
It's not perceived. It's highly visible.
I feel like the idea was they were trying to film the film from his perspective. And so they were trying to make us feel as slighted as him. The problem is you was so sloppy that I'm like, no, he's right. Like you did. Like you're the bad guys. Like you swindled him like horribly. Like you're terrible people. Like you're the villains in this story.
Right. You left him for dead in the jungle. He came back and you'd already lost all the money. And it's like, okay, well, we would have pitched back if we didn't lose the money. It's like, well, you left him for dead in the jungle.
You owe him something. Like
you owe him something. And then they offer to like pay him, like the husband offers to pay him off. And then the wife's like, no, here, have a drink. And then he passes out and it's like, oh, you don't get any money because you passed out from the drugs.
Like he was going to help his friend. And the wife is like manipulatively like drugs him without him knowing what's happening. And you could tell he's clueless in what's going on. And she's the mastermind here.
Well, he's clueless in like every single scene he's possibly in.
That's true too.
The only competent person in this entire film was the dog.
Well, the wife, she was just manipulative until she sees him.
Until she was incompetent.
Well,
she
sees the invisible man and she doesn't show up the rest of the film. She disappears.
She's not even in the last scene.
No, she disappears for the rest of the film. She's gone. She sees the invisible man and she affected her so much she fell out of the movie.
No, what happened is that they actually, they were reviewing the film and they went, she could be a very compelling villain. The Invisible Man's the bad guy. You remove her from the movie.
Making her a villain would have been clever, but they don't. They just disappear her out of the movie. That's kind of how it feels like. Okay.
So much of this movie
we need to get into the specifics because we're already talked a lot about it. So let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's talk the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic of the Invisible Man's revenge. What's the good? What's the good?
Okay, the good in this one would have been they set up the the wife to be like a really good villain, and they don't use it.
Mhm.
But what they do with the Invisible Man is they make him truly like one of the things that like in a lot of comic books or like horror stories, the villains is just like they're crazy or they're just monstrous. This guy is just evil. Like he's just awful. He's just an awful person. He is the like the Purple Man in Marvel, where he's just doing what pleases himself and using his abilities to self-gratify, and he doesn't care who he runs over or who he messes with. He doesn't care how wicked his plans are. He's not very bright, but he's clever. And so he makes really dumb decisions. Like he just listens to his friend, almost like he still believes in him a little bit and like just does what people want. And he just kind of acts on a whim. And you can't tell sometimes if this is who he is or if it's the serum or what. But that works. He's just kind of crazy and like just an evil person that just does what he wants. And he just makes in the moment decisions.
Yeah.
Some work, some don't. Some are smart, some are dumb. He's impulsive. That's what I'm thinking. He's impulsive.
Yes.
He is just impulsive. He just does what he wants in the moment, and it's all about self-gratification. A lot of it's in pursuit of the daughter. Like he's just like, if you were he on a whim, the guy's just like, well, he's not going to marry you. You're invisible. She's not going to want you. You're invisible. And he takes that literally and goes, oh, right. I need to be visible again, of course. And when he comes back, he's like, I did what you told me to. I did exactly what you wanted. You said I can have her. He never promised her that. I promised him that. But he just takes that and goes with it. That is the part
at face value. He's very
yes.
literal.
His character works as the Invisible Man. It's psychotic. That feels a lot like a lot of the other ones. Not as good as the original, but like the other ones. The Invisible Man feels like the Invisible Man. He's psychotic. He's all over the place. There's no consistency in his character. That works for him. The problem is everyone else is the same way. What's your good?
I would agree with you. Like actually making the Invisible Man already kind of a villain before he even becomes invisible is interesting because, as you know,
they kind of did that with the second one where was like what he like wanted. He was like in hiding and they used it to like fake his death, but he was already being screwed, so he's kind of doing some villain. But this guy is like that. But pure villain.
In the second one, though, he was the brother.
That is correct.
He was the brother
and he
was falsely
and he was falsely accused.
Yeah.
I remember in that one, you kind of mentioned that you wish they'd just gone full on with him being the villain. This is what we would ask for. This is like him as a villain.
Well, right, and it's interesting to see him as a villain, but the problem is that the film has no really redeemable characters outside of like the journalist and the love obsession. The thing is that like as good as it is that he's villainous and it really kind of like breaks the mold in that regard, where it's like, it's not some misunderstood person, it's not some person of circumstance. He is actually like he's already unhinged before he even gets the serum. But the thing is that
and it's hard to tell if the serum makes it worse or not, which is part of what the charm of the Invisible Man films is. How much the serum affects them.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like it's always been this major thing in every Invisible Man film that the serum has an effect on them mentally. It's not actually mentioned if this serum has an effect on people.
Well, in even in the first one, it never is fully confirmed if the serum itself caused the madness or the invisibility or a combination thereof. That's always kind of left for interpretation. It
does say that it makes him
but
unhinged. Like
it does
it's
like
a compound in it,
right? Yeah. But the consistency has always been that the serum itself or the effects do drive their impulses. They're craziest. In the first one, he goes a little mad. In the second one, he gets a little like revenge heady. In the Invisible Woman, she becomes like impulsive and like almost kind of, she becomes more humorous, but she's still like bombastic and flirty and like uncontrolled, like super drunk. She goes like super drunk.
She loses like her inhibitions and stuff like that, and she kind of just says she kind of takes advantage of the fact that being invisible, you can kind of do whatever you want. Like she loses her filter.
Yes,
she loses all.
And then
like,
Invisible Agent similar. Yeah. He loses his filter, loses inhibitions.
Yeah.
So it always affects them. And this one, it's harder to tell if it affected him or not because he was already a little nutty.
He was already kind of nutty.
And paranoid. He was already paranoid.
Yeah. He showed up like even before he became invisible. He was always like, "Oh, they're spying on me."
Yeah. Yes.
Like he has
that.
Like,
Yes.
of lines
They're
like
watching.
that.
Are you watching me? You're watching me. They're watching me. They're all watching me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's just so much about it where it's like it's good that they broke the mold, but they didn't do it right. So it's like tainted. It's not even like good. It's just kind of like a. Like this film doesn't even get like a good from me, really. It really is just kind of a note.
That's my bad too. Like you saying, like my problem is that the villain doesn't stand out when everybody in the film is also inconsistent and
when your main antagonist blends in with your heroes and your heroes are just as antagonistic, if not worse.
Yeah, well, that exactly.
Like that's the thing is
the good villain is ruined by the fact that the people that are supposedly the good guys did really actually legitimately screw him over.
Right.
It ruins the whole he's paranoid thing when he has legitimate reason to be paranoid. He was actually left for dead
in the jungles, and he doesn't remember where he was until he got hit in the head working on a dock randomly.
Yes,
that's never explained.
Yes,
that's never talked about.
Like
there's so much about that it's like, yes, you broke the mold, but it's not necessarily even good because it's not well executed.
It's and the other thing that gets me about the badness of the characters is that they're all inconsistent. None of them have any really. They're all wildly. They all they're all stupid. They're all super gullible.
Well, they're all either extremely clever and manipulative, or the most gullible people you've ever met.
Sometimes both.
And it does this the
entire
time. It goes left and right. Super gullible, very clever.
The
super
same
gullible,
characters.
Very manipulative. Yeah.
The same characters.
Same characters. All right, how about bad? Like we've already kind of started brushing on some
that's
of
my
this
bad
stuff. Yeah,
that's my bad.
Yeah, like the characters.
The characters. The villain. The good villain is offset by the fact that the good guys aren't really the good guys. Which in a way you can do. The good guys are actually also the villain, but that's not what they do. They just sweep it under the rug at the end of the film. They pretend it never happened.
Well, and that's the thing.
They just ignore it. At the end of the movie, they're like, "Oh, the poor dude was paranoid and he got what he deserved." Got what he deserved? You all screwed him over.
Oh, and they're all like sitting there like talking around the fireside as a big old happy family.
Yes.
And it's just like this bright
They
imagery.
got away with murder.
They're just like, oh, it's a good thing that he finally got his rest. Nature truly gave him his true comeuppance. And it's like, He was
a bad dude. He murdered the doctor.
Well, and he murdered the doctor, but the thing is that it's like they don't even like mention the fact that he literally could have been nature's wrath against them for screwing him over.
Well, you could say that about the doctor, that he got what he deserved for experimenting on this poor dude when he's in his
the way that he lit up when he found out that he was a fugitive on the run.
Yes, he was so excited about it. And you're like, okay, at this point, the doctor's poetic justice was getting killed by his own creation. That's the Frankenstein effect.
Yeah.
You're still not really actually the only... Now, he was going to kill the journalist guy, but he didn't. He got stopped. But he's not a good person.
Yeah.
But the only person he killed was the one who created him. That's in its own way of poetic justice. Like, you're not really convincing me that he's actually the bad guy. Like everybody else,
this movie is just a force.
Okay.
It's not even a force of good. He's just a force.
I don't want to ramble on really too much, but I'm just going to set the tone. I know, but I'm going to set the tone here and give it like a bad into an ugly transition, and then give it over to you for both of those.
Okay.
So my bad and the ugly transition here is, think of it from this perspective. You have a guy who got screwed over by his business. They discover, he literally says the tree fell on him after they discovered the mine. So they discover a mine, and suddenly a tree falls on him, and he's left for dead for 5 years, gets hit in the head, recovers from his amnesia, and realizes that his business partners left him to die. And he goes to see them, and the first thing they do is drug him, take the letter of proof that they had, and kick him out of their house. And then, now that you've been thrown out of this house, this guy finds you, tries to sue on your behalf in order to get his thing, immediately abandons you once he realizes you have nothing worth. So he goes to London in order to like go back to his dock job, you assume.
Yeah.
He's just going to go back to his old life because he has nothing left to live for. And this doctor takes advantage of the fact that you're a fugitive for things that you didn't create and turns you into the Invisible Man for his own fame and fortune, which he says is the reason he's going to do it.
As any good Samaritan
Parade
does.
him as a guinea pig and an animal. And then you said, no, screw that. I'm going to use this to get the revenge I deserve. And he doesn't go to kill anybody or hurt anybody. He goes and forces the man to give him something in return.
Well, he goes
and then doesn't, after, and then it doesn't even go. He ends up not even going all the way through it because he like runs away because he like panics or whatever. And the rest of the film is you just trying to like recover what's left of your life. Like, are you really the villain? Like, he's been taken advantage of by everybody.
He's not a bad guy. He's barely a bad guy.
He's like basically just trying to survive. But then he goes full on Machiavellian villain towards the end, which I get. Like, he's just like losing his mind. But he's like
completely justified in doing it.
It's like basically he's like everybody's actually. I just think, and then when he finally gets killed by his own hand, like it was poetic justice. He killed the doctor. His doctor's dog killed him. That's fair, but he went too far when he killed the doctor. But at the same time, they then all turn around and be like, "Good thing that guy died. Poor Sap was a paranoid freak. No one ever heard him, and he just suddenly went crazy." What?
And then it just fades into the fireplace.
Everybody in that room screwed that guy.
Well, not the love obsession.
No, that's true.
That's part of the reason that she's a villain.
She doesn't even know it.
She didn't even care about him.
Yeah.
Never met the man. Didn't want to be with him.
That makes the whole thing just now. You can make the only argument I can make to say this film is that the whole film is his delusion. But if that's the case, make that clear, because it looks to me like if that's all supposed to be from his point of view, the ending doesn't work because we were seeing it from their point of view too. We've been seeing both points of view. Yeah. You can't let us see both sides. You have to make the entire film from his perspective. Then you can be like at the end, oh, it turns out that was all his psychosis.
But then the thing is that if you're going to do that, you have to make it very clear to the audience that it's been warped. The way that we've been viewing the entire thing.
And you only see characters from his perspective. Only from his perspective. You never see them outside of shot from him. You only see it when he's there. And then you correct the events in the end and you realize it's not how they really happened.
Yeah.
That's the only way you save this. Well, that's my bad and my ugly. Like, I feel like Universal just gave up on this one and we're like, nah, you know what? We need to keep the rights to Invisible Man.
Invisible Man's popular enough, we can just throw him in whatever.
Exactly.
You don't have to really worry about it.
If this is the first film we watched the Universal series that feels like Universal phoned it in.
Yeah, it really does.
All right, what about you, sir? What's your ugly? You talk a little bad. Go ahead with bad too, but ugly.
Yeah. Bad. Well, my bad and ugly do blend in together.
Okay.
And I would say that it's the plot. The plot itself is bad, and it makes it very ugly. It's very hard to follow where you're at, and it follows in with the characters. The characters aren't good because the story isn't good. It's hard to follow where everyone is and where everybody stands.
So many inconsistencies.
There's so many inconsistencies. There's so many things that just
plot
don't
holes.
Make sense. There's plot holes. There's a lot of things that it's just like even motivations
plot
don't make
devices.
sense.
The contrivancy, the convenience of walking into the doctor, the invisible person on the side of the road because he's
in the middle of a rainstorm.
In the middle of a rainstorm, in the middle of nowhere, just happens to run into the Invisible Man guy. At least the Invisible Woman had it where like he put an ad in to like attract people.
Well, and she
or the one where he was like related to him or a friend.
Right.
You know? Like this is a random stranger you just happen to run into.
Yeah, it's always been a thing where either the ad is the only one that actually doesn't fall into the formula of all the other Invisible Man ones, where it's the person's either originally created it or
is a family member of, or is in the second one, the person Invisible Man is not the member of the family, but the doctor who does it is.
Exactly.
And he was his friend. He was helping his friend. That's an already established connection that makes sense. The guy, if the Vinid already knows you, that he would use on you, but to just randomly stumble into it is just way too convenient.
Well, in the second one, he made it specifically for him. He synthesized it for him so he could escape in the second movie. In this one though, it's too convenient. But the thing is that it's also like you have a young guy character, our main character, Robert. Was it Robert Griffin?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because he called Bob. Yeah.
So Rob Griffin, you have a relatively young guy who's going into the jungles, and it's not explained like why they're in the jungles. Are they looking for gold? Are they looking for jewels?
Yeah, the whole start of the film is just a throwaway line.
Right, and it gets thrown away, and it's very intricate, but they don't spend enough time on it. This is the other thing too.
Yeah,
it's like
very contrived, but they don't explain it. It's a super convoluted, contrived plot,
and they don't let it air
that they
out.
just run over really, really fast.
Yeah, and the thing is, the entire movie hinges on it. And that's the thing. It's like very early on, this whole thing hinges on this because it's like, okay, you have a character who's had amnesia for the last 5 years after being left for dead in the jungle, has no idea how he got out of the jungle into this dock. He gets hit in the head from the dock, has a head injury there, but then he somehow ends up murdering some orderlies in an asylum that he's been in. And that's not explained. He gets out of the asylum, ships himself to London from wherever he killed these people, and now he goes back to try to have his old friends finally give him what he deserves, but then he gets poisoned, and they don't even say he's poisoned, so it's like we don't
That's
even know.
That's true. It's implied. It's not even made clear.
Well, it's not even implied that he's poisoned. It's implied that he couldn't handle alcohol because he's psychotic. That's the only thing that gets implied by the entire thing. And so he gets drunk. The wife takes all the notice and says, "Oh, we'll keep it for him until he's sane again." And then the husband just believes this. Everybody takes everybody at face value. He runs into this random guy who decides to sue on his behalf, even though he's like a local drunkard and not a lawyer. But he gets a lawyer. So he gets a lawyer on behalf of this other guy that he's just heard a story about. No proof, no evidence. And then he only stops trying to sue him because the constable shows up, and the constable never shows up again, really.
He shows up at the very end. The constable's the one at the very end.
At the very end.
That gives the line that he was all the poor sap.
And so it's just one of those
we were
things.
trying to do that's why I was having a struggle with the summary, because I'm like, what's the plot summary? Huh?
Right, and just like
chaos, absolute chaos.
Exactly, and it's like trying to talk through like the bad and the ugly here of why the plot is the bad part. I have to kind of talk through the entire thing because it's controlled chaos, and it makes no sense. Like, you have a love interest who has no idea this dude even exists. Also, if he's friends with her parents, is he her age? And if he's her age, why don't they know each other? Why didn't they ever meet? He acts like it's his right to marry this girl, even though she no idea who he is.
Well, and you don't know how much of this is like trauma, or how much of this is that, because he talks about her a little bit at the beginning, but not like that obsessively until he gets the serum. It's like, did the serum enhance that affection, or is he just losing it? Like, what is happening to this guy?
Is he actually just completely mad? Does the girl not remember him because he's been somehow disfigured and we don't realize that? And then she's dating a journalist, and then the journalist he's just there to kind of move the plot forward. The mad scientist in the middle of nowhere makes no sense. he just doesn't. Like,
no,
nothing really
it's
with the mad scientist
incredibly
makes sense.
contrived.
Yeah,
I just the whole thing.
The whole thing is ugly. The movie is bad.
I wanted this is the first one of the Universal ones where I regret watching it, and it was like, I don't want to watch this anymore. Like, I don't want to finish this movie. Like, it's awful.
We got about 45 minutes into this, and we were talking about it, and we're just like, we have to finish it just so that we can say that we finished it, so that we can get so that we can be unbiased.
Yeah, it's bad.
Now, DJ, with all of that said, what's iconic about this film? Well, it's clearly the second best Invisible Man movie that's ever come out.
Yeah.
It's clearly superior to the vast majority of films. And the only reason that people don't like this film is because they don't quite understand this genre of subversive horror.
Yeah, okay.
And it's truly genius.
from where was you read these from?
IMDb.
Oh, okay, IMDb
Yeah.
reviews, and it was like the most pretentious. Like these people are like, I'm a connoisseur of movies, and people just don't understand that this is good. No, it's bad.
Well, if you actually watch
I-
some of the films from this
I
era,
read the contemporary reviews, and the contemporary reviews were much closer to what we feel now. Like I was
no, they
reading,
hit all the same things we did.
exactly, like dead on. Like the plot is missing. It relies too heavily on special effects, which have been done to death.
And the special effects aren't even that good
They're not even the best.
for an Invisible Man film. Even
Yeah,
like,
they're not even the best they've done, and it's the plot. The leader, like the one of the third reviewer of the time was like, "There's no plot to this film." I was like, "Yes, that's." Everybody now is going to look back at people now being all looking back at the film now and going like, "Well, we know better than them because they just don't understand." No, contemporary reviews got it right.
The films of their time. It's like, no, they're experts.
Maybe
in the
if you
films of
watch
their
this
time.
film in a vacuum, maybe you might get that pretentiousness. But we watched every other Universal film up to this point.
and
It stands out as a stinker. And my iconic to this film is actually the ugly to it in reverse is that it is amazing to me that after
It's
everything
iconically
Universal did, that Universal picked Invisible Man and went, you know what? We're not even going to try anymore. This feels like the first time to me that Universal looked at a property rights that they owned and said, make a film about this. We don't care if it's good. Just make it happen. Like, pick pieces off the cutting room floor and just make a film. We don't want to lose rights to the Invisible Man. We have plans. That's what this felt like. Obviously, that's a thing they do all the time now.
Yeah.
Marvel did it with Fantastic Four. You saw it with I'm actually sure the memory of something. But there's been a lot of those where they just make a film to keep the film rights. This feels like the first time Universal did this, and that is in itself iconic. It's a bad thing, but it feels like, oh, here it is. Here's the first time Universal did this. Here's the beginning. Here's the first time they just said, let's hold on to the rights. And it paid off because they still made other films. And they still studio. They made it through it. It didn't kill them. They managed to hoodwink us. And it's not the first time because I've seen movies where they did it again.
This is the second film in a row, too. I feel like this film doesn't... Okay, so we know from just some of the notes and stuff that we had from watching Phantom of the Opera that parts of the film were left on the cutting room floor, and the script made sense of a lot of plot holes. I feel like this film almost has the exact opposite effect, where they have these little spots of intrigue, but they don't know what to do with them.
Yes.
And they don't care enough to actually like wrap them to the conclusion.
And that
It feels like the script
in order.
the script purposely gives you enough intrigue to stay, and then doesn't do anything with it on purpose.
because you think
It
it's going to pay
feels
off,
like
but it
that.
never does.
And then at the end, you're just like, oh, it's a typical resolution. What? And it feels like,
Oh crap! You're right. This is one of those films we watched where the film could have worked if they ended it right, but it ends without any of the lead up being given any kind of conclusion.
Yeah. So let's move into so that's like good, bad, ugly, iconic. Overall, this is a bad movie. Just if you're watching with us, we're watching with the classic Universal Monster Movies DVD Blu-ray box. We like to give a shout out. We're not sponsored by it, but it's a good series.
It's a good collection.
It's a good collection.
It doesn't have every one that they did, but it has all the big ones.
And it's all remastered. It's Blu-ray. It's high def. Like they're gorgeous to look at, and the sound's pretty solid. There's a couple of things in this one that
There were two spots where like the audio just like cuts to a completely different track of audio and then flips back, and you're like, what the heck was that?
Yeah. So this is like one of the first ones that actually had that issue. But anyway,
I wonder if this one had. You know what? Now that I think about it, not to give it like excuse, but I will. There are some things about technology at the time. This might have been a case where like they lost a lot of the footage and they just had to like make it work.
That's being very optimistic.
It is
considering
being
the
very
reviews.
optimistic, but the fact that there were so many like audio errors and like video errors where like clearly there were like issues with the film and audio just being bad and they had to like probably take whatever they could get there's also a lot of weird cuts and transactions. They may have just like had to cut and reshoot and make this film work.
Yeah, it's possible.
But they still feel like they could have done better. Like I actually, I'll let you finish first. But we usually do, the whole like after this, we'll do like how to fix it. We couldn't think of one for this. I actually have an idea.
I have a couple ideas.
Yeah, so
like while we were talking, I came up with a couple
exactly
of ideas.
same. As we were talking about, I'm like, oh wait, now I realize what I can do. But sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, so if you want to follow along though, that's the box set that we're doing. We're not sponsored. Just if you want to follow along, it's cool. One thing that immediately comes to mind to fix this film, the way that it kind of is, all you have to do is when he dies, change to color. And have people talk about the plot and make it so that it's just like, of course the plot doesn't make sense. He's psychotic. He literally only sees the world in black and white thinking. There's right and there's wrong. That's why he's so trusting, is because he thinks his friends are always right. And when he's wronged, he's wronged. And he has to have revenge on the people who wronged him. And you just change it to color and have everybody just stop and just be like, good God, man, that man was insane. Nothing makes sense. Why does nothing make sense? And it's literally because we have been watching the movie almost entirely from his point of view.
That was my fix too. The easiest way to fix this movie is you just make it so that we watched it from his point of view and then we see the other side of the story.
Yeah.
My modern take of this would be to do exactly the way this film is. It's crazy. It makes us, but you made a good point. What I realize now that saves the film is those hooks. It has tons of hooks that keep hooking you in. They just never pay off at the end of the film.
Yeah.
That's easy. You just give them the payoff. You leave this movie exactly as it's filmed, with making no sense like it does, and then at the very end, you flip the script, and then it shows what actually happened from everyone else's point of view, and you're like, oh, he was insane.
He is actually insane.
In the very beginning,
randomly run into this person. No, he was found.
You can have it where all that the jungle scene and all that stuff is like just thrown in there, and you're like, what is happening? And at the end, it's like the jungle thing never even happened.
Well, no, he went to these people just for money, and they don't know him. You can literally do that, where it's just like they're held in terror because he's invisible.
You can do it whatever you want. You can have it. You can have it where like. The invisible once the invisible serum, have it where he was fairly normal at the beginning, but the invisible serum messes with his mind, and so he thinks that they said it happens, but it goes back and it shows him just like a beggar, like asks them for money, and then the scientist finds him and like drags him in and experiments on him, and that's when everything goes crazy, and his perception, past and present and future, are all warped. And so what really happened before and now isn't what it seems. Like, and boom, you can have this movie run. I might cut the runtime a little shorter just so that I can have literally a whole like 30-minute climax where 30 minutes I take the film and show it from everyone else's perspective. Kind of like they do with like a heist film. Like a heist film where they show what really happened after the fact, like they do with Ocean's 11's a good one, where you think they've messed up, but they actually planned for this the entire time. That kind of a twist, but it's what really happened, what really went down, and you see all those things. They've done that before in films, where they show the real, what really happened, the real perspective. I'm trying to think of all the top of my head. Can you? I've seen one fairly. Hoodwinked is a good one.
Hoodwinked does that, where literally you get the one story and it makes absolutely no sense, and then you see it from everybody's perspective, and it's like, oh, that's the actual overarching plot.
Yes.
And little parts are explained like as they're going.
Hoodwinked is a good one. There was a live action one I watched where it went back and showed things that really happened. I know a really good one actually. Sixth Sense.
I guess
the Sixth Sense does that, where he realizes he's dead the whole time, and it goes back, and it's like showing flashbacks. Or Unbreakable, where it shows him going and like the villain and like he caused the fire, he caused the train wreck because he overheard things. Like that kind of a thing where you go back and you show what really happened or the full truth. You open it up. Like some of the things that happened to him might be real. Like, oh, they did drug him and throw him out. But that's because they were afraid of him. He was you can put some of the things are real in there and some are fake, but it's all mixed up.
There's a lot of things that you could really do with this. Now,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if I'm making this from like a modern audience perspective, I'd make it more psychological. Like they kind of do this anytime you have the Invisible Man. It kind of has become like this psychological thriller. Like the newest Invisible Man is almost entirely psychological in nature. But this film I think works really well as a psychological thriller. But here's what I would do. The matriarch is evil. She actually is evil. Make her an actual villain. Make her an actual villain, because the thing is that you have enough little hints and hooks and stuff with her at the beginning where you're like I
oh, that's clever. You have her manipulate him, and she actually sells him to the doctor to get. So she's the overreaching villain. His perceptive is warped, but she's actually, and then you end the film with her, the reveal that she's the true villain, and she gets away with it.
Dang it, DJ.
I know I stole it from you. I'm sorry I stole your thunder, but dang it, our minds were linked, and I couldn't. That's so good.
See, because it is one of those things where there's enough in it, and then the guy in charge is very thrown off. He's like, he's been missing for 5 years. We thought he was dead. I feel so awful. We really need to do something to take care of him. And then the matriarch is like, don't worry, I'll make sure that he's taken care of. And sends him back to the doctor that gave him amnesia and kept him.
Oh my gosh!
And kept him away.
Oh, okay.
And then he's like, okay, fine, I'll make him disappear. And so he gets an idea because he's a mad scientist. He goes, I'll literally make him disappear.
It's perfect. No, it's perfect. You brought up hoodwinked. That's actually the way to do it. Yeah. You have 3 stories in the film. You have the film that you watch. And then you have what really happened to him, the things that he witnessed, what really happened in those situations. But then at the end, you reveal her secret plots that he wasn't aware of, or the audience. That's the real truth. And so you see, he's like, "Oh, we were in the jungle finding diamonds, and you tried to kill me." And then like when it goes back to the real perspective, it's like he's doing that to the husband. It's like, I don't know who you are. What are you talking about? But then he really was in the jungle with the wife, and she betrayed him, and he wasn't there.
Well, no, and the thing is, like in this movie, they actually have a thing where he was not there. The guy was not present.
Wasn't there, exactly.
And the wife is over dramatic. And it's just like, oh, I remember the branch fell, and I said, oh, look out, and like played it out. And then the husband was like, well, yes, I just knew that you went into the forest and you never came out. I was not aware. And all you have to do is literally be a thing of like, yes, she dragged the guy out, this young guy, and was just like, hey, there's something that I need you to help. I need your help with. I need young strapping guy to be with. And then she literally tries to kill him, but he survives. And so she's like, oh, shit, I get rid of him. And so she gives him over to this doctor because.
Yep, to make him disappear.
And so there's a.
Oh, that's so good. John, write that down. Nobody steal this. This is ours. I want royalty checks when this movie comes out.
Gets a call from Universal. Knock, knock. Is that Destiny? No, it's money. But that's all you have to do is literally make it so that she's the bad guy. And you can even make it to where she's kind of like off-putting, and then we're sitting there and we're like, oh, this is absolutely insane. And then that's when you switch it. It's like you've only been through like 30 minutes of film. And it makes absolutely no sense when it resolves. And then it switches and it's just like, no, this is actually his perspective. This actually happened. Like what he's talking about, he's not insane. He's actually promised this girl.
It turns out,
like he was promised, like he was actually in the jungle. He got almost killed. He was promised the girl. He was promised 50%. The guy is like, and the guy isn't like a bumbling idiot. It's like, no, he actually like cares, but he keeps getting manipulated by the wife.
Yep.
And so finally the third reveal is literally like, this is the wife manipulating everything the entire time.
So
and then you leave on a hunting shot of her at the fireplace, and it just shows her like just kind of sitting there like, oh yeah, it was absolutely a tragedy, and then that's when you end the film. You just leave it hanging where it's like, yeah, she got away with it.
Yeah,
She manipulated everybody,
Yep.
and she's gotten away with everything. The Invisible Man murdering the doctor in the first shot. No, she burned the lab down and made sure he was in it. Because she was wrapping up all the evidence, but everybody blamed the insane guy.
So the first third of the movie is literally the movie as we see it, and then the next third is it's showing him being insane by all the things that he was seeing from his perspective. Because it turns out the formula actually was affecting his mind.
Yeah.
So he was seeing things that weren't really happening. But then the real truth is that no, she was manipulating the whole thing. He is really crazy. But that doesn't mean she's not also the bad guy.
Well, no, he went insane. But the thing is that he didn't go insane to the point of like most of the stuff he talks about is actually true.
Yes.
Like when he says things where it's just like, "Oh, you murdered the doctor." No, I wouldn't murder the doctor.
But you twist the audience into thinking that maybe he is actually did all these things because he's he's obviously crazy.
Yeah.
And you see the film from his point of view, and it's like he's the film of this. There's a little bit crazy, a little bit like this stuff, and then you see the truth where it turns out that he was actually just crazy the whole time. But you leave some little hints that something's still not right, and then the final twist is no, she manipulated. He was actually right most of the time.
He was almost entire. He wasn't insane. No. He was crazed.
Yeah, he was
paranoid.
Yeah, he was paranoid,
yeah.
and he is wrong. Like some of the you can have
because he doesn't see everything, so he does see something, and it's kind of wrong. But a lot of what he says, like when he's like,
I mean, such a good twist too, because you're so used to the Invisible Man going crazy, but it turns out he was actually the victim all along.
Mm-hmm.
That is so clever, man. I want to make this film now.
It would be good. Like the thing is that when it comes to like the Invisible Man movies, like there's so much potential to do well. So part of it that really sucks about movies like this, where it doesn't really do that great, is that it hurts a little bit more because the potential. The Invisible Man has so much potential.
Man, you could. I just realized, John, with that lost potential for that film, you could do like a long thriller, like a Bourne thriller, like a 2.5 to 3 hour film. And you could back and forth that. Bourne, actually, I just realized probably the best of that because it's all about the memory and manipulation in each film, like adds more context to it. But instead of having 3 films, you have all those 3 films in one where it's like 3 separate perspectives throughout the film and you don't know who to believe anymore until the end.
You could also almost do a thing of like Project Hail Mary where you have a guy who has amnesia and he's living through the plot and he only knows enough to actually like continue on with his mission. And he's not even like 100% aware of his mission, so he's piecing it together. And as he pieces it together, more of his memory filters in. You might be able to do something like that with the Invisible Man where it's like, okay, I'm invisible. Why am I invisible? Who am I?
You start out with him being invisible,
yeah. And so you could do something like that, even where it's just like from his perspective. And you do that part where it's like from his perspective after you show you only need to do like a 5-10 minute thing showing his rampage, and then it cuts back to like earlier and it's him trying to figure out who he is when he can't see himself. And he's piecing together things and he's getting little bits of his memory.
That could work.
You could do that. That might be a little harder. That would be a lot harder.
I just like the idea of taking the film as it was and giving it reason, because just the film as it was filmed with the horribly like rushed early exposition and like crazy like backstory works if it's all in his head.
Yeah.
Because you can have it where like he's psychotic enraged from the formula and stuff, but he's still not necessarily wrong. It's like he's off. Like he's missing the point.
It's like he has like he's kind of blinded by anger.
Yes.
Like a toddler with a tantrum.
And so
the toddler having the tantrum is wrong, but what they're angry about
is legit
to them. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And so he see like the things he's seeing are exaggerations of reality or misrepresentations, but not as much as we think. So the original theme is, oh my gosh, this guy's a crazy lunatic. And then you see the truth. Oh, we were right. He's even worse than we thought. Like the first story is more like this, where, oh, he's bad, but he's also been wrong, but he's bad, but he's been wrong. We can see both points of view.
Yeah.
And then the second story is only what actually happened to him during the moments we saw.
Yeah.
The opposite view, but only what we saw. And then the last is the manipulations behind the scenes.
Actually
so we're
showing like how the
exactly.
movie actually made sense.
So it's like, oh,
it makes sense of all the little plot holes, because you can watch the movie and be like, there's a lot of plot holes here. This isn't very good. But then at the end, it's just like, no, the plot holes are on purpose. It makes sense. If
it
somebody
fills in all
manipulated the
exactly.
story.
It fills in all the holes, and you're like, oh, turns out, yes, he was a crazed lunatic and he did kill a person, but she manipulated him into it. She was in control. He murdered the doctor in a crazed rage, but it turns out that she set that up. Yep. And he didn't actually set the fire. She did. He remembers doing it because obviously he must have, because he did the fire. But it turns out she set the fire. Yep. Like, you leave gaps in both stories that don't quite fit together. So the puzzle pieces almost fit perfectly, but there's that little bit of gap, and that fills in, with the manipulation at the end.
Uh-huh.
You just slap all the last pieces together. That makes this film work, because if we watched this film and then at the end, like you said, when he dies, it goes to color, and it's like, man, what was this guy's problem? And then they start discussing it. It goes back and shows what really happened from their point of view, and you're like, oh my gosh, this dude wasn't wrong. They didn't even know who he was. Like, the husband didn't know anything about him. He was just a crazy lunatic. This other guy was just afraid for his life, was just trying to help him out. And they're like, holy crap. And then she sits there and goes, yeah, that's how it happened. And then you see the truth.
Yeah. And it's one of those films where you kind of have to watch it a couple of times. Because when you watch it back through the second time, that's what I would have loved from this one.
Yeah. The hooks, like you said,
like, you leave it at the end, and then it's just like, oh my gosh, I have to actually watch it through again. Did that actually work out? Did they actually do that? Like, was it actually like?
Were the signs there?
Which one was actually true?
Which one was actually true?
Who actually?
And if you do it well enough, the final closure isn't even 100%. There's still enough there of doubt, but it's strong enough that it should conclude it. What made that work for me is, like, the reason we kept watching the movie is it kept hooking us like it was going to go somewhere, and then it just never does. If those hooks finished with anything other than a blank screen, it would have given it closure. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to give the film. I'd love to take this, what could have been a masterpiece, and finish it.
All these films could have been masterpieces. All films could be masterpieces.
Well, I mean, that's true in of itself. And even a lot of the films that we watched that weren't masterpieces were still good. They just, I mean, there's the old saying, there's no such thing as a perfect movie, because hindsight is 2020, and you as the viewer have the ability to nitpick. You can nitpick anything to death. This one just fell so short we didn't have to.
This isn't even nitpicking.
No, it's just bad.
Honestly, that final thought though, when it came to like IMDb, those reviews, I've noticed that there's 3 different types of reviews for that movie. You either have, and the thing is, if you look at IMDb, it's like a 5.6 out of 10 stars. Like, it's higher rated than some of the films we've watched. But this is why. You have people like us who watched the film and criticized it. It's not good. It's 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
3 out of 10 maybe.
Yeah.
If you're generous, but 2 out of 10. And that's even with the contemporaries. That's the people that actually watched it at the time too. Right. Nobody seemed to really enjoy it at the time. Then you have the people in the middle, and the people in the middle are literally people that are just like, I remember watching this in the movie theater for Creep Fest in 1966. I remember watching this as a kid with my mom and dad. I remember watching this with my grandparents, and it's nostalgia. And because it's nostalgia, they don't feel right giving it lower than, 5 or 6.
Fair.
And then you have the people who are pretentious douchebags who literally give it like an 8 and a 9. And they're like, it's a completely underrated masterpiece. I don't understand why people don't talk about this when they talk about the classic Universal monster.
Because there's no plot in this movie.
and that's the thing, is it's interesting to see how,
because it's a masterpiece of a movie. It's not a film. There's no plot.
Yeah, and it's just interesting. It's like a case study in like the errors of review systems.
Yeah.
Is because it's like, because people are like so adamant that it's a hidden masterpiece because they're a bunch of hipsters. Now the film gets like a higher rating, and then there's enough people in the middle that are just like, nostalgia wins. I can't disgrace the memory of Peepaw in my summer blockbuster where we went and watched these creature features.
That's a 5.6.
It has to be like a 5.
The fact that you said that was higher than some of those watched.
It is like, I think Phantom of the Opera had like a 4.7 or something.
The only two I could see that you could make an argument for a lower score if you wanted to be even a little pretentious on this film would be Phantom of the Opera, because it has a major plot hole, and the other one being Werewolf of London, because it's just kind of bad. That's it. Like, all the other ones
they're pretty solid.
They're pretty solid.
They can be campy, but they're pretty solid. Even all the Frankenstein ones
get really campy towards the end.
They've been very campy lately,
but they're not bad.
They're not bad. They're still enjoyable. There's only like 2 or 3 movies so far that we've watched that I'm like, I'll never watch it again. There's only like 2 or 3 of them so far that I'm like, I'll never watch it again.
Yeah, a lot of the problems with a lot of these films is their time. Like, they suffer from the time they were in. They have issues with like budgeting, with like time frame, only be able to get so many cuts of film. A lot of the really early ones were acted like stage plays. Yeah, to be done in a single act, and you can tell, and that works really well. When they start doing them as films, that was when they started to struggle a bit, because they were having to film like modern films without as many takes. So you could tell that there were cuts and there were things that they changed post, which was new at the time, and you could tell they suffered from it. That's excusable. This is bad writing, bad direction. You could tell it wasn't directed very well, because there's horrible inflections of characters. Motivations change. The motivations change. It's poorly directed, poorly written, poorly executed.
Yep. A lot of it just falls flat.
Yep.
Speaking of things falling flat, that's not a good transition. I've lost my ability to do my transitions.
Oh no.
Darn it. Anyway, we talked a little bit. The thing is that with films like this, we just kind of like, it feels like you have to air it out a little bit.
We did ramble a bit on this one, but it's and repeated ourselves. But the reason is because it stands out amongst all the other films. It's not like any of the rest of them.
And it's so convoluted that in order to like kind of make your point, almost, you have to like regurgitate half of the movie to make any sense of the point that you're making. Because if we're assuming people haven't seen the movie, if people have seen the movie, we could 100% just be like, oh yeah, that one scene, and it's like, oh yeah, of course, it has a really complicated plot.
And but because YouTube won't let us do clips on films anymore,
right? But talking to an audience that hasn't like seen this movie, and we can assume most people have not seen the Revenge of the Invisible Man or the Invisible Man's Revenge, you have to regurgitate half the movie just to make a simple point.
And this is the one film that we've watched that I would actually encourage you not to bother with.
Yeah, really don't.
I mean, I say that not knowing
if you are a cinephile. Okay, I'll caveat. If you're like a cinephile, if you are like us and you want to watch all these movies just to like have the experience, be able to talk about it intelligently, see the entire chronology of the classic films, go ahead and watch it, because obviously like nothing's stopping you. But if you
and it could also be referenced in a later film that we don't know yet. I doubt it. But
I doubt it too. But who knows? If you are just watching these movies casually and you're just following along the series casually because we kind of explain the plots, this film it's not really worth your time.
You will be disappointed.
You would be very disappointed.
You will be disappointed with it.
Yeah,
because everything that the film does that's good doesn't pay off in the end, and you just end up sour. You just get to
when the movie ended, I was bitter.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies that at the end of it, I really was bitter.
Yep. They set up a whole bunch of stuff and don't do anything with it, and you feel it. It's not subtle. So, yeah.
Speaking about things that are not subtle, the like button, because we can see when you like these videos. It helps us to know that you are enjoying this content, and that it gives us a little bit of an encouragement to continue on. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you seen the Invisible Man's Revenge? What did you think about the film? Otherwise, let us know your thoughts. Maybe some of the things that we talked about piqued your interest, or anything like that. We are getting to the second half of this series. We have a plan for the next series, I think.
I think we are. Yeah, we're just a little bit past the halfway point.
But if there's any films that you want us to watch or you want me and Pat to watch on our other show, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, share us with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're a growing community, and we are slowly getting past that 60. We're at 55 subscribers at the time of filming here, so exciting stuff as we're getting into the new year. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next video.
Thanks for watching.